live. Hi, everybody out there in Horn Hangout land. Welcome back to the Horn Hangouts, our first Horn Hangout of 2020. And we are in Birmingham at the Birmingham Conservatoire, where I'm lucky enough to be the International Chair of Brass, although today I'm the International Sofa of Brass. Large groan. Thank you. We are celebrating the very first great Birmingham Brass Fest, which has been organized by the head of brass here, Amos Miller. Isn't Amos great? And dear Amos is also a member of the Onyx Brass Quintet, who have been described as the classiest brass ensemble in Great Britain today. We are going to see how true that is, and they are going to play us in with a great piece by Stephen Dobson, am I right? Simon Dobson. Sorry, Simon, he's here somewhere too. Simon, are you here? Well, hi, Simon. Apologies, I will never call you. You can call me Sally for the rest of my life. A great piece. They're going to play us in. Take it away, boys, and see you in a few minutes for the rest of the hangout. Fantastic, thank you. That's the stressy part now. Now comes the easy part. Or is it the other way around?
No, that's definitely the stressy part.
Definitely the stressy part. Welcome. Andy, you were going to go, you're going to go there. Oh, there's a big brrrr going on in here. Has someone run away?
Come on, Niall. Come on, Niall.
Come on, Niall.
Jump over.
We're really lucky that our great technical team here at the Birmingham Conservatoire are live streaming this, and Handsome Tim is awake in Melbourne. Thank you, Handsome Tim, for running the stream via 5Stream. Thank you. Big round of applause. And as always, I have the live audience here on my wonderful tablet. We're not supposed to say iPad, are we? Other brands are available. And people are watching from Stephen from Portland in Maine. My mum watching from Esher and Surrey. Handsome Tim in Melbourne, of course. New York, Chris in New York. Tom Redmond is watching, hey, from Dublin. Hey. Hello, Tom. Masses of people. We want to know who is watching and where you are watching from. Because here in the audience, we have all the participants of the great Birmingham Brasses. Amos, yes. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
What's it been like organizing all this lot?
I've got a few more grey hairs now than I did when I started. It's been quite full on, but it's been amazing because so many incredibly talented people have been here, and they've all been so generous with their time. At least you, obviously, for coming and inspiring everybody.
It's a pleasure. I like my international sofa.
I'm going to change it on the website.
Dave, how long has this quintet been together? Forever?
It feels like forever, sometimes. This is our 27th year.
But you're only 30.
It's unbelievable, isn't it, looking at our faces?
It's a bit worrying because we were in youth orchestra. We were in the National Youth Orchestra together, so we're not going to count, but we must have started when we were maybe 1.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 months.
Yeah. Oh, you looked it anyway.
So,
he behaved it as well.
I was smaller than you those days.
All right. Let's not.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking height, nothing else.
Yes. Well, moving swiftly along. Tell us more. How did you get together?
Well, it's a bit cheesy, I suppose, but the name Onyx is an anagram of XNYO, and you were just talking about the NYO. So yeah, the 5 members of the group now are slightly different to the 5 members who started the group, but back then we were former members of the NYO. Now we happen to be former members of the EUYO, but we can't really change our name to EUX.
What with EUX?
Yeah, it wouldn't quite work, would it?
No, but that's actually, I didn't realize that. That is not on your website. If anyone can post the link to your website, then you'll see even more information than, actually probably not a lot more information. I spent a long time reading about you guys and listening to all you've got great videos on there, and Amos can talk, can't he, really?
He can,
He
he's a
really
good talker. Yeah.
Apparently.
Hind legs off a donkey.
Niall, you play in the LSO, London Symphony Orchestra, and the last time we saw each other, do you remember? Coffee time?
I do. That was Brisbane, wasn't it?
It was in Brisbane.
South Bank, Brisbane. I was having a wonderful time, and all of a sudden I heard the sort of Neighbours theme tune played by about 400 horn players, and I thought, I wonder if Sarah Willis around the corner.
And she was. It was a good arrangement, wasn't it?
Beautiful.
It was
very
great.
nice.
And you were also there to support your friend and colleague, Phil Cobb,
Yes.
who had to be, I don't know if he's watching. Phil, are you watching? You said you were going to write in and get your revenge on your dear friend here. He actually agreed to do a hangout, which everyone told me he wouldn't, but he did.
He did, yes. I watched it as well. I thought he did very well. Yeah, I mean, he, isn't the sort of guy that likes to talk about himself, I guess.
He did a really good
He
job,
did a brilliant
though.
job, I thought.
You had a bit of problems. You were out in the bush, weren't you?
Yeah, I was at my mother-in-law's, sort of on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. No phone reception, on a hill somewhere, trying to make sure I could send this video through, but it got there in the end.
It did. It was a really good video with his cap on
That's
the way.
right.
Yeah, you have to watch the Phil Cobb Horn
He was
Hangout.
going
if you
through a
haven't
cap phase.
Yeah.
It's not a big...
Now he's going through a cool glasses phase.
Yeah.
We'll do that for the next one. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here today. It would have been a shame if you weren't, because it wouldn't have been a quintet.
Yeah.
That's true.
Andy, it was so great to see you again. We're not going to say how many years it's been.
A couple.
A couple.
I think let's leave it there.
And we last saw each other in playing for Ensemble Moderne in Frankfurt. My goodness.
Yeah,
and where are you now?
I sort of split my time, but mainly...
Split your time.
Split
That's
my
not
time.
a good...
Not the word to put it. I divide my time. I can't divide one on the horn. I'm from English National Opera. I'm in the orchestra there. I do some teaching with my good friend Dave as my boss.
At Eton,
in
right?
college.
That's right, yeah.
You have a boss, so Eton voice.
Do I?
Yes, I think so.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think so, yeah. It's
Okay.
quite, I mean, people love Downton Abbey and all that these days, so
Okay.
they like that. What do
see
you
you
think,
in that.
guys, online? He has a really cool voice, actually. So anyway,
very
sorry,
much.
carry on.
It's quite interesting because we've got 2 bosses and 2 workers in this group. Sitting on that side, we've got the bosses.
Hey.
And sitting on this side,
The dog's bodies.
the underlings.
I was told these 2 can talk the most, and this camera was getting them all on. So we thought we'd put the talkers on
They
there.
do,
But
they
you
do.
you were doing really well up till now. I mean, gosh.
It could change, don't worry.
So you teach at Eton as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's 2 horn teachers there, and basically time is juggling all the time. So I can't actually fit in the whole lot of horn students there because we've got a good crowd. But yeah, as life as a musician in this country.
Yeah, that was something I was going to touch on. I mean, like, Alan, how on earth do you manage? Because you're teaching here too.
Yep, I assist Amos, yeah.
Alan's the associate head of brass.
The associate head of brass.
Apparently, that sounds very
But
official,
I have a
doesn't it?
sofa.
It means I basically like float in and float out and float in all
And
the
he
time.
does the
yeah.
work.
He does all the admin, yeah. All the hard stuff.
I just WhatsApp him 63 times a day.
Yeah. I think that file's getting pretty big these days, isn't it? The WhatsApps between us. But yeah, I do that. I'm one of the principal trumpets in the CBSO, so I spend a lot of time on my Brompton between the 2 buildings.
The CBSO, the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra,
That's
for people
it.
watching.
That's
We've
it,
just
yeah.
had someone watching from, Ian Porthouse is watching from Dobbo. Well, he knows what. Hello, Ian. Pierre from Wales. F. Horn Patrick is watching. Oh my goodness, all these people. Stephen is watching. Incredible. Toronto. Wow, that's really amazing. So CBSO, City of Birmingham Symphony. But you've just gone back there.
Yes, yeah. That was my first job out of college. I did 9 years and 10 months. I just missed my long service award. And then I joined the BBC Symphony Orchestra for 5 years. And then when Amos got the job here, he sort of said, do you fancy being associate head of brass here? And I thought, hang on a minute, I wonder if my job's still going at CBSO. And it had been sort of vacant for 5 years, so a couple of phone calls later.
You're back.
And, yeah, and I'm back here, back in the CBSO, and back assisting Amos and doing Onyx and lots of other things like that.
How do you manage to find time to be in a quintet for 25 years with the same people if you're all so busy?
Well, I mean, the group's been going for a long time. I'm the newbie here. What have I done now?
7 years.
5, 6
Oh, you
years
really
or
are the
something?
newbie? That wasn't on the website.
7 years.
Yeah,
Sacked
so
web,
I think one of my first official gigs was the 20-year anniversary or something. So, yeah, I've been sort of catching up ever since, really, and I think just about now I'm getting the hang of the repertoire. But most of the time it's playing things that they know backwards, and I'm going, how's this go? Can we play that again? You know.
But you don't know all your things backwards, do you? Because one thing I really admire about your quintet is the commissions. You've played, how many? There's like,
We reckon we've premiered over 200 pieces now.
for brass quintet. That is amazing. It really is. What a gift to brass quintet.
Yeah, it's been our sort of ethos since we started to try and. I think we really believe in the. What does that mean, shaking? We really believe in the
Drum roll.
It's either that or someone's practicing snare drum.
No, we really believe in the format as a worthy format for chamber music. We think it works really well. And obviously, if you want to have, there was pioneering work done by the New York City Brass Quintet, and obviously the amazing Philip Jones Brass Quintet, who Philip was a real patron of ours when we started.
And Ursula Jones was at the day, yes, she was here yesterday. It was so lovely to see her, 90-something. And
only just given up downhill skiing and converted to cross country at 90.
Just amazing.
But so we just kind of think you have to create a repertoire so that hopefully in 100 years' time, assuming Armageddon hasn't happened in the meantime, then there will still be brass quintets, and they can look back at this time as being a formative time for repertoire. So that we think it's very important that we, and sometimes we try and contextualize new music, because I think new music is something that brings with it a fear for some audiences. It kind of can be, a whole evening of contemporary music. So we try and, there's been almost no programs we've played ever that haven't had at least one new, not brand new, but one contemporary
But when you
piece.
say new pieces, I mean, like last night there was a new brass band piece. But it was very tonal. We're not talking about squeaky gate music, or are we?
We've done a few things that sound like a fire in a pet shop over the time.
Fire in a pet shop.
But
I love being in England again.
No, I think even music that can be very atonal, very spiky, and on first hearing and first looking for when we first see the music can be, oh my goodness, how are we going to make head or tail of this? I think feel very strongly that if you introduce pieces properly and help audience get a handle on what they're looking out for, what special techniques we use, what kind of mutes, what kind of flutter tongue or whatever, then people, even if it's not necessarily going to be on their Spotify playlist later, it'll be at least something that's a profitable listening experience for them, rather than just a whitewash of sort of elitist kind of, oh, we're cleverer than you because we play all this stuff, and if you don't like it, then you're stupid kind of thing, which I think can sometimes be the case with classical music if we're not careful. So that's kind of been our ethos, is to try and do that. So
Dave, what makes a good commission? I mean, obviously what you just played just now, thank you. But that's also a very tonal modern day piece.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, tonight we're going to play two new pieces, one by Simon, one by Tim Jackson, and they're both, I just hope we're able to play them as well as they should be played, but they're both fabulous pieces in their own way. And probably your audience, certainly here, and hopefully some people online, would have recognized that Simon was using a very familiar brass quintet theme for that last movement of his piece. And I think, it's a clever thing to do, and I think composers have to be clever like that. As Amos was saying, there's not quite so much squeaky gate stuff going on.
Squeaky gate, I wonder if we have to explain that to our viewers that are watching in non-English speaking countries. Squeaky gate means the really modern music that just sounds like a door being opened. That's a very British way of describing modern music.
Was it the BBC Symphony when Boulez was there who coined that phrase? Is that right?
I don't know.
I could imagine that.
I think that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Really?
I think so.
It's a very good way to describe it.
There's nothing wrong with that kind of music, as Amos said. It's got, as long as you contextualize it. But I think composers nowadays like to sort of take the heavy lifting out of listening as much as they can. So Simon's very cleverly using the Malcolm Arnold theme in that last movement. He calls it a borrowed theme in the subtitle to the movement. And Tim Jackson's piece later, very strange rehearsing it, because Tim's been a great friend of the group since the beginning.
Tim is principal horn in the Royal Liverpool. and we had a masterclass with him today, and
right.
he scared me. He knows so much. Oh my goodness! He was explaining about overtones and the overtones that are in the notes that you can't hear, and what note of the chord it's. If his piece is anything like that, then
it's a wonderful
respect.
piece. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece.
We have to draw lots, and 3 quintets are playing at once. So we're playing with a really fine young quintet tonight called Onyx Brass, and another fine young quintet, one of our student groups here, Curzon Brass tonight. So it's a world premiere with 3 quintets at once.
Wow,
you can never have too much of a good thing.
You can't. And speaking of a good thing, you are going to be coaching in a few minutes when we've got to know each other, when the online audience have gotten to know you. And if anybody has any questions online, then please write in and let us know. Let us know where you're watching from, and let us know what you're drinking, because it varies. You know, the people who are getting up in New York are drinking completely different things than the people going to bed in Australia. Water, yeah. Water. And also let us know if you have any questions, because this brass quintet has been together for so long, and I'm really fascinated to find out, the secrets. What makes it good? We all know when we're listening to something that's good, but why is that? Why is that? So the commissions are a very important part of
the
that.
commissions are, and I mean, if you look at all the, Amos mentioned the New York City Brass Quintet and the Philip Jones, and you've got the American Brass Quintet, and in this country, groups like Fine Arts Brass have also spent a lot of time commissioning, and I think commissioning sort of gives you longevity, because not only do you have your name written on the top of the piece of paper, commissioned by and for Onyx Brass or whoever, but I think it sort of, even if people don't appreciate or like the music, it sort of gets you on the kind of contemporary music map in a kind of mini way, and therefore you become more of a kind of known entity.
You just wait, after the Horn Hangouts, you're going to be the biggest known entities out there. By the way, Margaret is watching, and it's her birthday.
Oh,
Happy
great.
birthday, Margaret,
Happy
wherever
birthday.
you are.
Happy birthday.
Claire. No, it's not Margaret, it's Claire. Sorry about that. Claire, it's Claire's birthday. Happy birthday, Claire. Claire says it's your birthday, and Margaret said there's nothing like a Horn Hangout on your birthday, so happy birthday. Anna from Hungary just asked, what about female musicians in brass formations? Are there any girl quintets? I know Tina's.
Well, we've got a student one here, Lux Brass, all-female second-year quintet here, who are doing great things.
Great.
And there's certainly 2 or 3 American groups, aren't there? I think there's
Seraph, is it?
Seraph Brass and
Seraph
Stiletto Brass. I think one of them's called.
Yeah.
Playing into the stereotype. Why not? Good marketing.
We have a horn quartet called Genghis Barbie that all have different colored bells. So whatever goes. I was brought up when I was studying the horn. I did everything I could to take the attention away from the fact I was a girl brass player, because I thought it was a disadvantage. But now, celebrate it. Why not?
Absolutely.
Now, what do you think of all these commissions? Do you sometimes get parts from new pieces and think, ooh?
No,
Be honest.
Honestly, I mean, I think most of the commissions that we've done, I haven't had that. I mean, sometimes we do get sent music that we haven't asked for. That's a different kettle of fish. Sometimes you get some interesting things. But no, of the pieces that we've had commissioned, I mean, Tim is a great example. We've commissioned, 5 or 6 pieces from him over the years, and he is able to write music that's challenging in many ways, but it's so idiomatically written. His knowledge of the instruments comes through. It's difficult, but you can never say this is unplayable, this is frustrating. There are challenges that you need to overcome, but not in any way is it unplayable. I think we've been quite lucky on that front.
Yeah, I think we have, but I also think, to add to what Niall's saying, I think it's really helpful if the composer has an open mind when they send you the music, and we've had a couple of composers come to rehearsal, and very often they'll say, oh, that doesn't quite sound, is that a bit hard on the instrument? And you say, yeah, it is really. And they say, oh, well, for goodness sake, let's change it and do this, and it'll work much better if it, and so that really helps. And I can only really remember 2 pieces in the 27 years where both composers in both cases were absolutely stuck on exactly what they sent us is exactly what should be played. And,
Are you still playing those pieces today?
No, we're not.
What it meant was that we just did the premiere and that was it.
Yeah. Let that be a lesson to you all out there if you want to ask them some nice pieces. So what about getting together? How did that happen?
As
Initially.
The quintet, yeah.
Initially, you're probably again, it's probably better to talk
These
to
two
those
are the
They're
founding
the
members,
founders
right?
members.
So you two are the founding members. You've been here for the last...
Well,
Andy joined.
7 years, we reckon.
And you,
I think.
you
I'm
came...
pretty early on in the
Andy
the
was
whole
on
thing.
about 6 months. Dave Pyatt
David
was
Pyatt,
already.
it's not very good horn player.
David who?
Well, he wasn't up to standard.
You just
so-
had to sack
yeah,
Dave.
we sacked it. Yeah, you go. Robbie had to
Anti-
go.
Sorry.
Heard it here first. Yeah.
That's quite an act to follow, so good for you.
But so that, so I was it 1995 that I joined, somewhere sort of, And bizarrely enough, we were at Eton College on Friday, and that was my very first rehearsals at Eton College in the very building that we did this concert, and it was a bit like, sort of quite a nice sort of.
Our first ever gig was in Eton College, and we all got the giggles, and I discovered that Dave Pyatt he's the only brass player I know who can laugh through his nose while he's playing. So the rest of us completely corpsed.
That sounds like
he
that
could just
could get a
carry
little
on.
wet. Anyone want to show us how that's done?
No.
But to come back to, I mean, you asked Andy about the kind of origins of the group, so am I talking too much? Tell me if I'm talking too much.
They told me you were going to talk the most.
Okay.
So
well,
that's fine.
If you like it or not.
Quite soon I'll get some looks from my colleagues.
No, that's good. I've
and
got
then
some
I'll-
questions coming in for you as well,
okay.
which is good.
But
Yeah.
actually ended up being a real blessing, no offense to Dave Pyatt, but when Andy joined the group, because Onyx, when we sort of conceived of Onyx, we kind of conceived of a sound. I hope that doesn't sound too pretentious.
Depends on what the sound is.
And, well, yeah, but when Andy replaced Dave, the cohesive lower brass sound in Onyx became something that it never quite was. Dave, obviously the most amazing horn player, but we seem to, the blend between the three of us for the trumpets to put their kind of sparkle on the top seems to have always worked much better with Andy, so he's really a kind of founder member. Dave doesn't mind if we call Andy a founder member.
Aww. There's two really good questions come in. T. Cecilia from Norway, who loves Hangouts, thank you. Any suggestions for not too difficult great quintet pieces?
Ooh.
Alan, what would you say to that?
Oh, goodness.
What we've done? Sorry.
The Battle Suite.
I don't know. Amos probably got more
It'd be nice to
repertoire
have
ideas than
quintet
me.
pieces that are sort of authentically written for the quintet. I assume that's what she's meaning, maybe.
Yes, but not too difficult. The thing
Not
is,
too
I mean, my dear colleague Stefan Dor is having a fantastic time getting pieces commissioned for him. Amazing horn concertos, Wolfgang Riem and Abra Hansen. The problem is none of us normal mortals can play them. And this might be a danger with quintet pieces, with new commissions.
There's a lovely piece we played, which we don't publish, but is published by John White, and we did it in our Purcell Room debut in '94, I think. It's called Doggerel Machine, and that is it takes some getting. You have to play it very well together and with beautiful ensemble to make it effective. But technically speaking, it's very straightforward.
Those are the sort of pieces
Doggerel
we
Machine,
like,
yeah,
right?
it's proper pieces.
Doggerel Machine, if
by
anybody
John White.
by John White, if anyone can find.
There's a recording of it,
Find
of
it.
us doing it,
Yeah.
if that helps.
And Evan Broadwell, that does help. Promotion, there's a recording of them doing it. They do have recording, they have CDs, and you also publish your own music, is that right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's a bit of a cottage industry.
I have it all in my loft,
In your loft?
and I post it as and when required.
Amos, that's such a lot of work.
Luckily,
Tell me about it. I've been,
yeah, I was going to say, it's the hardest working person I know. So.
which one of the quintets are your favorite? Asked Ewald. Ewald, isn't that the guy who wrote a quintet?
Yeah.
I like
Nice
the one that goes. I had to pick one of the Avals. I don't know what number it is, but that one. Three. Yeah,
There,
I think
that's
the
a
best
good
one.
one. That's a bit tiring for horn, isn't it?
It's
though?
quite tiring.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's much harder work for the horn.
Of course,
I like
always.
to tell myself.
Brass quintet is much harder work for the horn, full
Surely
stop.
everything's harder for the horn, isn't it?
Everything is
Life
harder
is
for the
much
horn.
harder.
Generally, people hear it's harder as well, sadly.
But that is the one where the tune is either in the first trumpet or the trombone, and second trumpet and horn just go.
It's all page, isn't it?
Progressively.
Do you have any favourites, Alan?
What, general brass
Yeah,
quintets?
general brass
I mean, I think the legendary one has to be the Arnold, really. I think I was sort of in contact with Simon Dobson about this commission, and I sort of thought, well, it'd be great if we had another epic quintet that's programmable and easy to listen to, but also sort of breaking boundaries. And I just said, well, the reason it's got this little quotes of the Arnold in was because it's just such an epic work, and although it's hard work, I still think you can play that in any sort of setting,
He just
and it
got
always
didn't
goes down
he?
well.
He just knows how to ride. The piece he
Yeah.
played,
Yeah.
he just knew how to.
I mean, we've played a lot of Arnold recently, actually, because a couple of years ago we recorded a whole load of fanfares with John Wilson conducting, which was pretty
For a
epic.
big brass ensemble.
We extended Onyx out to, I think, at the beginning, we did some fanfares with 18 or 19 with percussion as well.
Wow.
And on the final day of recordings, it was just me and Niall recording fanfares on our own. Having finished every fanfare on top C for the last 2 days. Yeah.
No.
And the rest of us just sitting there going like this.
Yeah, waiting to go to the pub, I think. Yeah.
Speaking of the pub, there's a very good question just come in from F. Horn Patrick, who's in Toronto. How important is the relationship with each other in a quintet? Do you find if you are all bonding really well, the music is more lively? And what would you suggest a new quintet does to bond? No.
I think, but that's actually a really good question because
Yeah, it's a really good question.
You asked how we keep going for 27 years, and as you say, between the five of us, there's sort of 7 different orchestral jobs, 3 or 4 different big teaching jobs. LSO is obviously famously unbelievably busy schedule. It's very hard, and the WhatsApp threads can get somewhat tetchy sometimes. But the fundamental fact is that every time we meet up, we're really chuffed to see each other. It's your best pals, basically, and you're making music with your best pals. And it takes, because the music's hard, obviously, but for me, I find myself getting much less nervous for quintet playing than I do for orchestral playing. And part of that is because you're playing all the time, so you've got less head time when you're not having to sit 3 movements of Brahms 1 getting pearly about a chorale or whatever. But it's also partly that somehow I feel that I'm not going to get sacked from this group if I play really badly.
Not if you have all the music in your attic.
Not if I have music. I'm going to take the music hostage. No, you know what I mean? There's a sense that you're with your pals, so they've got your back either way, however you play. So
and the lovely thing about having been together for so long and getting to know everyone so well is not just this juggling of orchestras, but we've all been through various traumas and life cycles and children and we've all kind of lived through, and I suppose on any given day
Traumas and children.
Well,
new
sort of
paragraph.
Read into that what you will.
sums me up at the moment, but no, the point is that it's sort of a mini support network, and peaks and everyone is always kind of, we're either just kind of coasting, or individually there might be something going on, and there's always got to be some give within the kind of social framework of a group for it to continue to function normally and without angst,
That also works from a playing point of view, does as well, not just social point of view, but from a playing point of view. As every professional brass player, as you know, if you're doing high-profile things, there will be times where your chops just feel awful, or you just feel, whether it's psychological or whatever it is, you might feel like you've got the yips, or you might feel like it's just not working the way you want it to. And actually having colleagues like this who you're not, you keeping the gig is not dependent on how good you play. So you can, and they all know you really well. They know you're playing backwards, so you can get some really lovely feedback from your pals, expressed in a caring way. Where I think you may be doing that with your tongue, or you may be, or you're sharp, or whatever it is. But you can take it from these guys. It's really nice.
Someone called Mega Mouthpiece says, Traumas, Life Cycles and Children, a great name for a piece. Okay, Simon, that's your next piece, all right? Someone, quite a few questions back, asked me, Avon Brondell wanted to know, have you experimented with positions? Do you have a standard way of sitting and standing, and do you find different advantages with different setups? This is a big theme because you're about to coach one of the student ensembles here, and we're going to stand, but then you wanted to sit, so they're going to sit. What do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on in the life of the group, we tried standing a little bit, and I think there was just a general feeling that it was too much like hard work. So we sat down very quickly. But I think, look, as long as you feel free and in a position to express yourself and to serve the music, then I don't think it matters so much. There is also the question of what's best for the audience. So, I don't know if I can answer that question, but...
What do you guys think? I prefer standing in our brass ensemble, Brother and Phil brass ensemble, we stand.
Yeah, I'm a sit-down person myself. But I remember doing an audition we did it was in the Wigmore Hall, and this was at a time when we were doing our experimenting with what do we do, and we sort of decided we want to do something different, we want to be noticed. So I seem to remember we stood almost in a straight line. sort of facing.
What possessed us to do that?
I know. I'm looking back at it now. How on earth did that go well? And I'm not sure it did go that well. But that was the time we were thinking about how we present ourselves. Does it work for the group to literally function there, and then does it function to the audience?
What about as a horn player? Because you know, in the Berlin Phil Brass, they tell me often I'm just there for decoration. Thanks, guys. Well, I guess it's a compliment, but I mean, with one horn, it's literally virtually impossible that anyone's going to hear you and pointing that way. So we thought about maybe standing that side, but then you need the trumpet there to lead. And you two are opposite each. No, you were opposite each other.
Yeah. I mean, we have experimented with certain things. I think often the venues we play in suit us sitting down. It's often we play in lots of music clubs and things like that, and often up on high stages. So I think standing isn't so important. Yeah. But we have experimented in a few pieces with Andy swapping with me. Where we do a nice piece in one of our jazz programs that features the horn heavily. So we swap over so Andy can really project. But I think that it's probably widely known that the horn can be the problem instrument in some ways, in the nicest way possible.
Everyone's facing out.
We have often found sort of certain bits of board and things to shove behind Andy to get his wonderful sound across.
Stuff. Put a table behind you or something.
Yeah.
But the other thing that can sometimes change, you know, watching other groups is the two trumpets often sit together, don't they? And that's not really something we've ever done, and maybe people should tell us if we should try it, because I mean, the antiphonal thing seems to work really well, but of course I'm sitting very near them, and so are Amos and Andy, and very often you come across brass quintets where the two trumpets are together. So
I think it depends on the piece. Actually, maybe this is something we should think about, but it depends on the repertoire. So sometimes it definitely makes sense for the trumpets to be facing each other. Other times it's quite nice to be next to each other and have maybe the trombone on the end, or I think we could maybe mix it up a bit more.
Well, I think
live on the edge.
But maybe with all the, I mean, the lot of new repertoire that we've done, I mean, we get so used to knowing the sight lines, and I can catch Amos. I mean, often a lot of the things that we're doing that we're not so sure of, you know, Amos and I are often sort of eyeballing each other all the way through. So I think we get used to where people are, and that's where we feel most comfortable and where we can perform the best. So.
Just to explain what Alan was talking about for the sort of brass quintet nerds out there.
We hope there are lots of brass quintet nerds. There are lots of brass quintets. So everyone, we're all nerds watching. It's lovely. We're allowed to be nerds. There are people watching live on Facebook as well. This is going out live on Facebook. So write in and tell us where you're watching from.
But Alan describing him and Amos sort of clocking each other across the quintet, we found over the years that the easiest way for all five of us to be kind of locked in is that my peripheral vision as the tuba player is the worst, because I've got a massive bell in the way of often being able to see Alan. So the easiest kind of link is to have Alan and Amos sort of giving us downbeats and things with the slide of the trombone and the bell of the trumpet. Niall tends to be out of my peripheral vision, and so that's what Alan was referring to with the kind of the Amos Alan axis. Yeah, the axis.
Getting to the
axis of evil.
Which gets us to the next question from Heidi Oro. She says she has a diplomacy question. Do you all give input on choosing pieces, making decisions, taking the lead, or does one person tend to take the lead?
Oh, how topical.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave is the engine of the group and always has been. He's the most efficient at answering
with his
emails.
Peripheral vision.
With his peripheral vision. So we occasionally take. Andy looks after all the music in terms of current repertoire, librarian, of all this sort of stuff. I've organised. We did a jazz CD of new jazz commissions a couple of years ago. That was my baby, so I organised all of that. But Dave is we have an agent and stuff, but Dave does all the day-to-day running and is the one who leads on everything, and which he's heartily sick of.
So you would recommend that a new brass quintet, or people.
I think if you can delegate, I think there has to be some, generally speaking, in a quintet, there has to be some slack cut to the trumpets, just because they've got more notes to play than everybody else. And I think a brass, not to put too fine a point on it, I think Dave mentioned the horn, trombone, tuba. We hopefully make a lovely noise, but a quintet lives or dies by its trumpets, because they get most of the tunes and they get all the flashy stuff and all the brilliant stuff. And we're ridiculously blessed having these two geniuses in the group. And I think So the fact that they both maybe do slightly less sometimes quintet-wise than...
I don't know what's happening. Sorry for the interference.
I don't know if that's me, but I think there's a certain, acknowledgement that we'd probably take to do a few more things, but
we're open to the trumpets doing more admin if they want to. That's fine.
But I think
remain silent. As not on that one.
But I think on
order the drinks.
a new group should set up. If you've got a new group and everybody's equally keen and got time, you should assign roles, to different people. If somebody has a sort of very tidy, fastidious person looking after the music, it's a really good thing.
Yeah. That's why I say use the personality.
Yeah,
within
exactly.
your group, because I'm not a particularly outgoing personality. So,
I beg to differ.
Thank you. But Dave is great at, as everyone's seeing, he's great at talking and also communicating to people. So, getting
You've
work.
got a nice voice.
Is all, you just have a great way of actually, getting people involved.
Are you always so nice to each other?
Yeah.
Generally. Generally.
I wouldn't necessarily publish our WhatsApp threads, though.
But to come back to your question about programming, you were talking about, I think the question was about programming. And so it tends to, the suggestion, actually Amos has been suggesting some program ideas recently as well. But what we do have in the group is the one big rule is the power of veto. So we send out the program and we say, guys, have a look at this. I'm going to send it in 48 hours unless anyone invokes the power of veto. Okay. And then anyone in the group can say, well, we're not playing that bloody piece again because that was a nightmare last time. Can we find something else?
And if they don't do it within 40 hours, it's their tough.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then invariably you'll find that when we, get to rehearsal, they're the concert.
Someone says,
somebody moans.
Who want to put this down?
It's sort of one other thing, actually. It's they're talking about looking after the trumpets. One thing that, as we know, these two can talk really well. And on some of our bigger, more sort of roast-up programs, sometimes Niall and I will give a look to these, and they'll often talk for another 5 minutes or so, just while we're getting some blood back in the chops.
That's my job in the brass ensemble.
Yeah, so
you sort of see them, they're like, okay, I'll talk about the weather.
Just keep going, yeah.
Well, there's one more question, and then I'd like to maybe get the brass, you can sort of start getting your instruments warm. Maybe we do a little bit of coaching. Annika's asked, do any of the people in the quintet also play instruments other than brass? And I also wanted to ask, what do you do when you're not playing your instruments? So, yeah. Do you play any other instruments?
I did. I dabbled on percussion a bit before I went to music college. I wasn't good enough to get in my local youth orchestra, so I played percussion instead. So I did my grade 8 percussion before I came to music college.
So you must have been good.
So, well, it's not that hard, is it, really?
Half the people have just left.
But, how do I fill my time? Well, I think I've got three children, so that takes up quite a lot of time. But in CBSO, we've got a running challenge going on at the moment.
I heard. You're running miles and miles and miles.
Yeah. Although John Holland, the principal trumpet, has gone ahead of me now. So I've been busy with this Brass Fest the last few days, and he's been running all morning and all night. So,
you all synced your watches so you can see.
Oh, it's all on Strava for everyone to see.
Gosh.
I think they're posting it so everyone knows what's going on.
Well, you can run around here while we're listening to the quintet.
Yeah,
that'll
might
help.
well do, yeah.
Andy, what about you?
I don't get much time actually. I've similar to Alan, I've got 2 children, which lots of ferrying around. My youngest is she's become quite good at fencing. She does sabre fencing, and I was at a competition yesterday, and 2 competitions next weekend. So that takes up quite a time. Like Imogen, my eldest.
On guard.
Yeah, it's quite frightening. I know nothing about fencing apart from what I've learnt standing at the side of a fencing piece. But Imogen, my eldest, she plays lots of instruments. She plays the violin, she plays the tenor sax, the alto sax, she sings. So,
but you don't.
I don't.
You just play the horn. That's enough, actually.
Well, to earn money, yes, I just play the horn. I sort of could play the piano if pushed, and I sometimes might accompany both of my daughters just for sort of a bit of fun.
And please tell me about the campaign for Real Ale.
Yes, it's one of my favourites. one of my favourite campaigns.
Can I just point out that it's no coincidence. We've got a little hashtag for this great Birmingham Brass Fest, which is GBBF, which happens to be the same hashtag as the Great British Beer Festival, and that's not entirely uncoincidental.
And actually, Andy is usually the one who finds us the good pub near a venue, isn't he?
Yeah,
That's a very important job.
that's
I think
my
people
job.
should put that on their
The
on their brass
librarian
quintet.
and pub finder. Yeah.
It's a movement which grew up. I'm not going to say how long ago because I don't want to give the wrong time. But there was a time in Britain when the making of real ale was at a very low ebb, and there were very, very few breweries that did it. And this group got together and have basically, over a number of 30, 40 years, have put the level of brewing in this country. And I think probably the world is, because you can go to most places in the world now, and they won't just serve you a bog standard glass of beer. It will be some sort of artisan ale or something like that. So
People
it's a great movement.
still make jokes about British warm beer.
It's not warm. It should be
Cellar cool.
Should be at cellar cool, 12 degrees centigrade. That's
That's a subject for another Horn Hangout. Yeah. Right, Niall, tell us all your secrets before we...
Well, there was a question about musical instruments.
Yes.
I used to play I sang a little bit.
Unbelievable voice.
yes.
Really?
There was a memorable moment when we went to Belfast years ago, and sorry, and we had Niall's parents were amazing hosts, and we had great Mexican food. I remember, and we all were a little bit worse for wear. And Niall's dad came back with a little C90 cassette tape and said, "Oh, do you want to hear Niall singing treble? Singing "Oh for the Wings of a Dove"?" And we were like, but his dad put it on. It was a live Radio 3 broadcast, and we all just suddenly shut up, and it was so beautiful. They were amazing singing.
It was very embarrassing. But
Do you ever sing anymore?
Karaoke.
His I believe I can fly. It needs to be seen to be believed.
Yeah.
We should have organised that for today. I wish I'd known.
Oh my good God.
Maybe some of your section have a video of you doing. I'll ask them.
Do you know what? The great thing is that most of this stuff sort of predated social media, so none of it's online.
I know the feeling. Yeah. And what do you do so you sing, and what else do you do when you're not playing?
Well, I have a little 1-year-old daughter who's taking up quite a lot of time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
She's brilliant, and actually, funnily enough, I used to play the piano a bit, and we're thinking about getting a piano for her to sort of mess around on, so that might kind of inspire me to have another go at it. But yeah, no, I don't know, I'm really into sport, although mainly watching it.
Isn't that the best way to be into sport?
I played rugby at school, which I enjoyed, but it's much better watching it on the sofa.
much better.
Less painful.
No, I was also a very good impressionist, actually, because on some of our gigs we stay often with hosts or with a B&B or something like that, and it's usually just as we all pile into the car that Niall sat there quietly during breakfast, and then we'll suddenly do the absolute perfect impression of our host in whatever accent it happens to be.
Can you do one of any of these four?
Ooh.
Glenn.
Oh, okay.
Glenn won't be listening, will he?
Glenn?
I'd be surprised if he's still alive, to be honest.
Dave, tell me.
Well, I mean...
Children and trauma, you said.
Children and trauma go together, definitely. My wife is a psychotherapist, so she wouldn't
That's
mind me
helpful.
saying that. Yeah,
That's helpful.
she takes the lead on the traumatic children. She hates social media, so she won't be listening to this, I can say with
that's a shame.
the utmost confidence, which is why I feel safe saying things like that. But,
the ones that will tell her later on.
Yeah. I'm sending her the link.
No, I don't have any other musical instrument. I mean, I sometimes think I'm a sort of frustrated musical actor. I'd like to be Tony from West Side Story.
Oh, yeah.
That would be nice. But I think that's probably, the balding grey head means I've probably missed my opportunity. Now, I've turned a bit to the dark side recently. I do some conducting, wind bands and things.
Shocking.
Which I enjoy. In fact, I've been let loose on the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire wind band in recent past, which was very kind, and I really enjoyed it. It was good. And I've just, in the last couple of years, I've started taking humanist funeral ceremonies.
I heard that. I was a bit, I didn't know whether I should actually ask. I've never come across a tuba player who takes humanist funeral services.
Well, it's just really, it was really to have a chance to do something.
Sorry, it's not funny at all. It's very impressive.
It's very niche, that's all.
It is quite niche,
it's just like,
I suppose.
what? But that's an
It's
amazing thing to
incredibly
do. Do the two go
satisfying.
together?
I think, I hate to say it, but you sort of talk about the voice, and I think people seem to like this kind of voice, telling them, what to do, stand up and sit down, and there's something really, the way that we're trained to do these ceremonies is it's all about a tribute to the person who's died, and there's something lovely about kind of weaving together all these stories that you hear from everyone and putting it into one big ceremony and delivering it, and it's very satisfying. It's not my life's calling, but it's a lovely thing to do every few weeks or months if someone asks me to.
I am so booking you for mine. Amos, that's really amazing.
Instrument-wise, I played the fiddle until I was 18. I played the violin. I used to lead the seconds in my local youth orchestra until the conductor ran out of trombone players and blackmailed me to play the trombone. But I don't tell many people that.
Gosh, well, now we all know.
We all know, yeah.
Now we all know.
Tactical error, wasn't it?
And now Amos has actually given one of his violins that he had to my eldest daughter. So that violin is still played. But not
so yeah, and in terms of, as you know, I've got 3 kids as well, and juggling lots of playing and also being here, so there's lots of plate spinning, so there's not a huge amount of time for recreation, but I'm with Niall on the sofa-based sport. I'm also very keen photographer, which I find a really good way of, I have a tendency to be a little bit like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, which is a bit like, if I'm not careful, always, I can be a little bit glass half empty if I'm not careful, and I find taking photos makes me, if you're searching for interest or beauty around you, it makes me more positive as a person.
I love following your posts, because he does amazing photos, doesn't he? Really, really good. Listen, I think it's time for some music.
Yeah, great.
So we have the Eastside Brass Quintet from here. A huge round of applause.
Just shift the music over.
And they have been sitting around for the last 40 minutes. So if you guys want to play a few notes, you're more than welcome. Just to let you know, if you're watching on Facebook, this is the fantastic Onyx Brass Quintet from Great Britain. We're in Birmingham at the Great Birmingham Brass Fest. And we're about to have a mini masterclass. They're going to play for us, and you guys are going to tell them whatever you want to tell them. And what are you playing, guys?
So we're going to be playing Quintet by Michael Kamen.
By Michael Kamen. Is this one written for?
Yeah, it's classic, really lovely.
So one movement work, but it's very beautiful.
Fantastic. Take it away, boys. Bravo, Eastside Brass, live from the Birmingham Conservatoire, the great Birmingham Brass Fest. We have left to right, Ali, Charlie, Mark, Barney, and Sam. Is that right? Did I get that right? Yeah, well done, guys. Thank you. So, I'm very impressed because if I was playing live on a Horn Hangout, I wouldn't choose anything slow. But I'm very impressed at how they played it. Yeah. So this is your masterclass, please.
Right. I think I think it's always good to start with positives, isn't it? And I think there were so many good things there. And we probably can't see it on camera, but these guys have just been sat there for nearly an hour while we've been jabbering. So just to come up there and play a couple of notes and play something like that with that control was really, really
Can I
really
ask you something quickly? Michael S. asked about a group warm-up, and that's just something we could just quickly throw in there. Do you usually, I mean, you guys had no warm-up, so you know, even more respect for that.
A group no warm-up?
We never have really.
Well, but I mean, in the very, very early days, when the focus was on creating our own repertoire through commissioning and arranging, I think Amos and I mainly used to do lots of motets. We used to just transcribe. There was no arranging going on at all. It was just pure transcription. And I think having very simple, you know, the Sally Army guys use hymn tunes all the time, don't they? So I think having very simple tunes or motets can often serve to be quite nice warm-ups just to get the sounds blended and the intonation, people blowing freely.
Some quintets do. The very fine Spanish brass, Lua Metals. I used to work with their trumpet players in an orchestra in Spain years ago, and they used to. I don't know if they still do, but they used to do their technical practice together. They used to sit and play for an hour and a half before they got to their repertoire. They did all their scales together.
Gosh.
I mean, it's pretty brutal, I thought, but they're an amazing group.
So. Mega Mouthpieces in Auckland. It's 4 a.m. in the morning, and he or she really enjoyed that performance. So thank you from Auckland. Isn't it amazing where everyone's watching from? Fantastic. From Sweden, Margaret in Ohio said, "Wow, that was beautiful." So a lot of fans out there.
Yeah, well
So
done.
always begin with a positive.
Yeah. So I think and what I really liked, there was a lot of movement as well, and you could see that you all knew pretty much where all the entries were going, and in this piece particularly, that's difficult because I think in a brass quintet, it's not just knowing your own part, it's knowing what everyone else is doing, and who knows, you know, things might change in performance, and you can all move and adapt. And I thought the communication amongst all of you was really, really, really good, and also I thought the way you played your entries on your own was great as well. That you came in, you were confident, and everyone else sort of, well, I think you were supporting each other all the way through. So really good. Well done.
Yeah, really good. I mean, one thing in such a romantic piece like that, I mean, I just echo what Alan said. It just sounded gorgeous. We have a slightly kind of skewed sense of balance here. So I mean, well, just because the horn was pointing right at us, which is
it was
wonderful.
great. Well done, Barney. Well done.
I mean, it's a great sound you're making. So, I mean, maybe I presume that the balance was, for the audience, how you would have liked it to be. Show of hands for yes, or nodding, yeah, great. So, you know, balance is such a big thing. You can buy them all a beer afterwards. But something, you know, sort of, I suppose, related to balance is, you know, the issue of dynamics, you know, and when you're in a chamber group, I think people often sort of expect you to just sort of keep everything quite small. And I think you had some beautiful quiet stuff going on there, really kind of magical. And I just wonder if, you know, in the big fortissimos, you could just, I suppose, get close to that kind of sense of danger of, is this going to be too loud?
Can we have a few bars of the fortissimo bit?
Yeah, I was also thinking Charlie with the trombone quite often by default is the person who stirs the porridge. If you want to speed things up, and I was just wondering if you want to increase the dynamic, it may be that you want to move the tempo forward ever so slightly, so it doesn't feel so static, and also so it's a slightly less of a smack in the face. So don't be afraid to take the group by the scruff if you feel like you want to move it on, and just be aware of what he's doing. Do you want to go before one of the big bits, like before B or something?
Second time's always better in a master.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess, you know, risk it being too loud, and everyone will tell you if it's too loud. Well done. And I mean, just I mean, I don't know how that did that sound. Yeah, see, the audience are all nodding. So you can you know, take that risk and just push it up an extra level, and it just is it's pure excitement. You know, it just is more exciting. And you know, a little trick. I'll stop talking in a minute because it's someone else's turn. But a little trick, certainly for the trumpets, can be that because you're beautifully symmetrical the way you play, and you could just lift slightly and turn so that your bell is a bit more, just in the big bits, in those big expansive bits, and then suddenly they're getting this kind of wah. It's just something to have up your sleeve, isn't it, really?
And I think
anyway,
when you're playing in a beautiful acoustic like this, it's got incredibly high ceiling. Imagine, I mean, I've said this to you guys before, but imagine you're playing outwards, even if you're not actually physically facing outwards. Imagine that your sound is, you're sort of bathing them in your sound, you know, so you're steaming up your instruments with warm air through the instrument and sending it to the back of the hall. I think if you think of it like that, that will take any risk of it being edgy off. You'll just get projection at that point.
I think it's interesting, that warm air thing, isn't it? I think we think about that a lot in the group. And I think as trumpet players, we probably play the instruments that have the biggest risk of being brittle and harsh. And I think when Niall and I in the group, we try and sit on the wonderful sound that you three make and sort of think of that sort of sound.
Yeah, there's a famous Danish trumpet teacher called Christian Steenstrup, and he talks about thick air. I like that as a concept. So even when you're playing quietly, you're making a conscious decision to. You're not blowing less, you're just blowing slower. That's a really key
I like
distinction.
the warm air thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, how many of us have had in an orchestra a conductor go like that? And
Even before we play.
Yes, exactly. You know, and I think that your initial reaction is to tense up and do this. And I think we also do that in a chamber group. We see piano and we or pianissimo and think, oh no, and we tense up and we play with a sort of thin, nasty sound, which actually sounds louder and more offensive to the ear. So sometimes I try and sort of think, if it says piano, or you do get a conductor to do like that, just think, no, just make it warm, make it broad, and don't think too much about and no one ever comes out in a concert with a decibel meter, do they? And sort of, you go, no, well, that wasn't piano, sorry, no, that's it. So I think it's sometimes good to sort of just think, right, just to make the nice warm sound, and that's the thing that people go, wow, that's
what about like
nice
the beginning of the piece where it was, you know, who can give the confidence that?
Well, I think that somebody obviously has to lead it, but it's also about everybody's individual inner confidence as well. Innocently talking about P, every time I say P on a part, I think that means positive, you know, in my head. As a concept. Doesn't mean loud, but it means this is, you know, I'm not going to shy away from this. And there was just one thing that struck me, because this is Michael Kamen, of course, wrote so many fantastic film scores. One that sticks out is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I think it was
Kevin Costner.
None of you have probably seen that.
Kevin Costner.
Actually, quite an enjoyable film, but a really, really sort of appropriate film score. So, and this is very much in that style. So, I think in terms of feeling confident, you could think to yourself, you know, in terms of film music is trying to augment a story. Well, you sort of think about it the other way. So, create a story for this music, and you're a character in that story. And it sounds a bit of an odd thing to do, but in terms of feeling confident at the beginning, it's a nice way of just getting your mind out of, this is a very pressurized situation. P means quiet, lots of people are watching, you know, just in terms of making yourself feel a real ownership of the performance before it even begins.
Should we do that again?
Yeah.
You guys feel like being Robin Hood?
So yeah, who's Maid Marian?
Can I just before? Can I maybe just think about when you're doing it this time? One of the things I was really impressed with. I mean, you were touching on it, I think, earlier. But it's actually really quite complicated. There's loads of different rhythmic intricacies within it, even though it's this lovely sort of broad, sort of spacious sound. Actually, putting it together is really, really very complicated. So instead of maybe thinking of everything locking together and everyone, that triplet moving with that semi-quaver triplet, etc. Maybe try and think of more horizontal lines and where the music's going to or where it's coming from. Try and get away from that. You've obviously done the work to find out where everyone joins together, but now maybe go beyond that and maybe try and think of more vertical lines and where the music's going, and hopefully that gives the confidence. If someone takes on board, think, right, this line is going to there, it gives it, hopefully it should sort of imbue a confidence throughout the for the group.
You know, it's unfortunately 5 past, and I have to fly back to Berlin, so we're going to have to end this. Should we end with the piece again? I'd love to hear it again. You know, with all these tips that you've won. Would you mind? Please say no. But I mean, please say no, you don't mind. But before, that's what I meant. But before Eastside Brass play this wonderful piece, which is called
Michael Kamen Quintet.
Quintet. That's it. That's all. Michael Kamen Quintet. I just want to say thank you very much to the members of Onyx Brass for being here. You have a really heavy night tonight. You're playing two world premieres tonight at the great Birmingham Brass Fest here at the Birmingham Conservatoire.
Also marks the debut of a new brass ensemble from the local music hubs, Royal Birmingham Conservatoire Youth Brass, which I'm conducting for my sins, when we're going to play West Side Story Suite to open the concert with them.
Your talents are
My
endless,
talents
Amos.
have no beginning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for setting up all this. And Birmingham is really the place to be. You know, all these teachers, all these ensembles, fantastic students. I'm very proud to be here, and I hope you've enjoyed watching live online, wherever you've been watching from. Thank you for the chat. I'll make sure that everyone from the chat, everyone here gets to see the chat, and there's been a question about international students. Amos, maybe you can answer that later on. Thank you for joining us live on Facebook as well, and live on the website for all your questions. Not quite sure what the next live Horn Hangout is, but it's going to be soon, and I think you will like it. Before we go, there's presents. We've got, I literally got off the plane from LA and got back on the plane for Birmingham, so I didn't have time to go and get t-shirts for everybody. They're at a warehouse, but I do have one extra large, so I think Amos should try that. You have one?
You gave me one last time.
Okay, so that's an extra, but you have to promise to wear it.
Thank you.
We've got Andy for your horn. We've got a polishing cloth.
Thank you very much.
And for you three, we've got little key rings you can give to your little dog.
Thank you, look at that.
So
Thank you,
and
Sarah.
you guys get a beer from Amos later on. So thank you very, very much for being here. Thank you to the audience. Huge round of applause for all these fantastic people here. We'll see you next time on the Horn Hangouts, and to play us out, Eastside Brass, and listened to by the wonderful Onyx Brass. See you soon.